Hello, welcome to Veritas Podcast. I'm David Kim, the headmaster at Veritas Classical Academy. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, our assistant head of grammar school, Dr. Wildman, Dr. Amelia Wildman.
Hi, Dr. Kim. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce you to our audience, a little bit about you. You are our new assistant head of grammar school, and you're coming out of Texas.
Yes, although I am happy to be coming back to the state of my birth. I'm a San Diego native, but yes, I did grow up in Texas and spent most of my life there.
Well, me too. As you probably know, I grew up in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So
we are both Texans who have relocated to California.
That's right.
Or located back to California.
Wow, yeah, we have a lot in common already. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're proud of Texas, and we're proud to be here in California to make a difference for Christ.
Exactly.
So just to talk a little bit about your educational background for our audience, you have a doctorate degree in educational leadership.
Yes, from the College of William and Mary. I also have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in gifted education, also from William and Mary in Virginia.
You have a lot of experience in both teaching and administration in classical schools.
So I actually came to classical education very much through self-study. While I was finishing up my dissertation, I was looking at different school philosophies, and classical education really resonated with me for many different reasons. One of which is the commitment to academic excellence, and also the emphasis on moral development and civic virtue really reminded me of a lot of the desires and goals and objectives of education from the past that seems to be alive and well in classical schools. And so when I was finishing up my dissertation is actually looking at classical school teachers and their attitudes toward creativity, very much to kind of think about and perhaps answer back this assumption that oftentimes gets levied at classical education, is that we are rigorous but not interested in creativity or in imaginative thinking. And as you and I as classical educators know, knowing what the moral imagination is and knowing how important it is to shepherd a child's heart and mind toward Christ, that just didn't really make a lot of sense. A lot of these assumptions about classical education. And so I had the privilege of actually doing research with about 230 teachers, getting their ideas about how they teach, about their desire to facilitate creative thinking in their students. And so I was working on that while getting my own experience as a classical educator. I was privileged to work at a classical charter school in northern Colorado, and being in the classroom and educating classically was really like a revival to my career and to what I thought the purpose of education really was. So I'm really happy to be here and working with this great team here at Veritas.
Thank you. You have experience teaching at several schools, and the one that you just mentioned was a classical charter. And now you're here, which is classical Christian. And the previous school that you came was also classical Christian. So what's the difference from your experience? And I'm sure you made this intentional switch from a classical charter to a classical Christian.
What classical Christian education affords, not only for teachers, but for students, for parents, for our whole community, is, I think, the greatest opportunity for students to approach and discover truth, objective truth. There's a phrase that we classical educators use in looking at and wanting to shepherd a child's heart toward recognizing truth, goodness, and beauty. And as Christians, we know that ultimate truth is found in God, and that God is the author of all things. And so everything that exists, everything that can be known, everything that is knowable in the natural world reflects God's perfect design. And so really it is I think classical Christian education affords the greatest freedom for teachers and students to learn together about truth, goodness, and beauty with that kind of explicit understanding about God's presence in all things and God's hand and God's design in all things.
Thank you. I agree. Share a little bit about what you're doing here, some of the things that you're excited about.
So, what has struck me right out of the gate about Veritas is just what a tight knit community it is in the best ways and in the healthiest ways. These are people who have all been brought together very much with a mission to bring up and raise up godly disciples for Christ. But what's important and what is noteworthy about the teachers here at Veritas is that all of them not only have this desire to raise up godly disciples, but these are all people who very much embody the idea of education for freedom and learning for freedom, to free the mind. And what is neat about these teachers is that they all love to learn. They all love to pursue great things. I would say the concentration of so many great minds here, so many great minds, young and old at Veritas, is really something special. It's a very educated bunch of people, but people who are motivated toward using their talents and using their brains to serve the Lord, to serve students, and to serve their own desire and capacity for knowledge. We have teachers with all sorts of interests and hobbies and habits, and it actually creates a very healthy and a very vibrant community where everybody is on the same side. We're championing for the same things, but we're able to build each other up and to serve one another and to help one another. And it's often the case that when a new person comes into a school that is small and is very tight knit, it can often feel like a very lonely experience. And I've experienced that too, or I have personal knowledge of that. But I think there is such a heart for service here in the Veritas community, and there's also a sense of purpose, and I would say a sense of gravitas in our great task as educators. But there's also a lot of joy in that. And so when new people come in, there's really this welcoming attitude, and there's this desire to get to know new people so that you can figure out what their talents are and put those talents to great use. And I've seen that not just with the faculty and the leadership. I think that you are championing a great school here and leading by example. But I've also been just bowled over with how generous and how caring our parents are. We really do have a wonderful network of parents who support teachers, who desire to instill in their children at home the sorts of values that the children are learning in the classroom. And so there's that almost constant connection between the home and the school, and this idea of parents and teachers working together to raise up these gospel culture shapers.
Yes,
that's what makes Veritas really special.
So we're intentional about shaping our students' culture first, because as the saying goes, you can't engage in a culture war unless you have a culture first.
Very
right?
true. Yep.
You have to know what a truly beautiful culture looks like, feels like, for you to be able to, engage with the false one. And there are plenty of false culture out there. So we're on this very important mission, right? We're surrounded by just broken culture, is what I call it. People don't know what a truly thriving, beautiful, loving community looks like. It's difficult to find one. And that's ultimately what we're committed to. We want to raise up these students so that they can, be able to bring life into the communities that God will send them to. Let's talk a little bit about our teachers. I just am so thankful for our teachers. We have some new ones and some old ones, but I feel like we have a great line of teachers who are authentic. I mean, they're men and women truly committed to Christ, and they live it out. Can you say a little bit more about our teachers?
I think it's interesting to paint something of a contrast between the characteristics that we look for in wanting to hire Veritas teachers and the sorts of characteristics that might get you a job in the public schools. So in public schools, it's considered necessary to go through certain, philosophies of education, many of which are quite secular and quite counterintuitive to what our founding fathers had in mind for American education. And, it's all about, do you have the right sort of certifications? Have you taken the right sorts of seminars that, the powers that be at any given season of time think are important? But then I think about the sorts of teachers we have here, and it's really interesting how it works out that so many of our teachers have advanced degrees in theology. So many of our teachers come from Bible colleges or universities that have very authentic and very rigorous Bible programs. And I think that that's almost what we might consider as important as certification is in making sure that we are providing for our students not only godly men and women, but men and women who can serve as instructors in Christian theology, in the story of our church, and how the church has endured and expanded across time and space. And having teachers who are equipped to have real and authentic discussions with our students about what it means to be a Christian and what it means to be a disciple for Christ. And, I'm thinking in particular about several of our elementary school, several of our primary school teachers who have advanced degrees in theology, and they will learn how to create a lesson plan. They will learn classroom management. They will learn how to create tests and assessments that measure student progress. But and we provide that training in-house. But what's really special is that we have so many teachers coming to us, and that we have leadership that puts a priority on finding teachers who are equipped to raise up these gospel culture shapers, as you said. It's almost not quite sufficient in today's time to have an enthusiasm for Jesus and to have gone through so many devotionals. You really need to have great training in the articles of our faith and in the history of our faith to be able to reach children in the sort of purposeful and instructive way that we really need in classical Christian education.
I could not agree with you more. It's all about the integration of faith, genuine, authentic faith, into the subjects that they're teaching.
Right. And in order to have that genuine integration, you have to have teachers who almost instinctively, we talk about, and, I came from public school. We talk about the importance of teachers who are subject matter experts and who almost have an instinctive knowledge of their discipline, such that they can figure out how to teach, and they can figure out how to teach the curriculum, but they have such an implicit knowledge of, say, history or of mathematics that really in their profession, it's about conveying that knowledge in age-appropriate ways. Well, the same correlates to classical Christian education, where we need to have men and women of Christ who are so knowledgeable of Christian theology that they find ways of just within the day's poetry lesson or within a lesson on mathematics, they find ways to constantly reinforce biblical truths in everything, and to get kids to use almost as a litmus test, how does this reveal truth, goodness, and beauty? What does it say about truth, goodness, and beauty? How can I measure this with truth, goodness, and beauty? Not in a way that is, overly analytical and prescriptive, but in a way where students are really orienting their hearts, or students are learning to orient their hearts toward constantly seeking out what is true and what is good, and looking for objective standards of beauty. And what is the objective standard of beauty but that which reflects God's beauty of creation?
Exactly. I mean, since the founding of our school, I've had many teachers under me, and it's virtually impossible to teach theology or faith. They grow, they grow, but it's. I've seen teachers who have a lot of skills, a lot of expertise in classical subjects, but it's really much, much harder to find teachers who can integrate Christian worldview into these subjects. And all of our teachers, I believe, really have that unique experience, training, background in, as you say, theology, so that it's also almost like their second language, and they're integrating that Christian worldview into their subjects.
And I think too, just as a sort of meditation on beauty and aesthetics, to go back to what you had mentioned earlier, when we talk about gospel culture shapers, we are in a unique situation in California. California, in many ways, is a culture shaper of this country. And, as Christians, we are in a unique situation here in California because we have our culture. And historically, it was the dominant culture in California. Many of us are several generation Californians, and we can recall a time when the Lord reigned in a much more overt way out here. But we also, I think, are uniquely blessed to have a classical Christian school in California because we see so much beauty in our surroundings. This is something that I remember from when I was first touring the campus with you. And our campus is blessed to be nestled on a hill, and there are all sorts of different trees and flowers and bushes that our kids see on their way here every day. And coming from West Texas, I can tell you that if you are used to seeing a lot of flatness and a lot of dirt and a lot of many shades of brown, it really is kind of like coming into an almost Eden-esque area out here. We're also very fortunate to live in Orange County, where we have so many wonderful museums. We're in proximity to Los Angeles and its museums and galleries and places where with our field trips, we can really kind of indulge students' natural desire for wonder in a very visual sort of way. We also have wonderful symphonies here. In fact, in northern Orange County, we're really close to about 4 world-class symphony orchestras. And so our students have opportunities all around them as Orange County kids, as California kids, to be reminded of the beauty that God created and the beauty that man has created when he seeks to use his God-given talents. And so that's something that all of these things work together as great tools that we can use. So I think, it's a really interesting situation to be a classical Christian educator in Southern California, because we are in a place that cries out almost daily for the Lord, and has such a thirst for the truth that only God can provide and that only God can fulfill. At the same time, we're blessed to be in one of the most beautiful states with so many places for kids to go and to learn.
Absolutely. The richness of both the nature as well as cultural, right, heritage. Of course, the critically important component is the discernment, right? Without that biblical discernment, you can easily, that could become idolatrous, something that could lead us to destruction. But That's why we need an educational model that trains our students to discern, in these engagement with culture, and be able to know what is pleasing to God, and what is honorable, what is beautiful. And that's my hope for California, that through one student at a time, that they will truly become transformers of this culture here.
And as good stewards of the natural beauty and the treasures that we have. You're absolutely right. It's interesting how Satan can twist and pervert that which is good. And so, you had mentioned that an overemphasis on just that which is visually pleasing, or something we derive pleasure from, can be idolatry. But if we always remember God is the one who blessed us with these things, God is the one who gives us the gifts and talents that we may create things that in our own way can model and mimic his natural beauty, then we're actually becoming good stewards of his gifts. And stewardship, I think, is part of that discernment that we want to bless our students with here.
Yeah. So besides being busy with supporting the teachers, and visiting classes and so forth, I understand you also do a little bit of teaching, right?
Yes,
Can you share us
yes.
a little bit about that?
So, okay, I think that for most of us, I know you also teach to our upper school students. We are first and foremost teachers. We love being around children. We love conveying to them the joy that we take in learning, and seeing their developments in learning something for themselves, and really making those connections. And so, yeah, I try and bounce around from class to class, and try and guest lecture as much as possible. I think too, part of this was, when I was first starting out as a classical teacher at the school in Northern Colorado, our headmaster and assistant headmaster were both passionate. They came to us from the ranks of being passionate teachers, and they were constantly volunteering to guest lecture for us. And so it's very healthy. We teachers kind of had this idea reinforced that it was very healthy to our community for students to always know, our headmasters are never too busy to talk to you. They're never too busy to come in and share their joys with you. And so from their example, that was always something that I wanted to continue. And we have very generous teachers who will share their students with us.
Share with us exactly what you teach, and what you're excited about these days too.
Well, we before we sat down, we were actually having a conversation about music appreciation. Any opportunity I can get to go into the music classes and visit with kids about about music is really fun. And what's really cool about Veritas is we have so many students, even students who are 5 and 6 years old. They're practicing their cursive, and they're practicing how to hold a pencil. Meanwhile, they've been taking violin for so long that they know, how to hold a bow and how to handle their instrument really almost at a profession at a tiny professional level. It's really neat how many musicians we have here among our student body. So, music appreciation and exposing students to our rich heritage of classical music is something that's really fun to me. And it reminds me of when I was a teacher, and I taught 4th grade my first year, and the 3rd grade classroom next to me would begin every day with St. Matthew's Passion. And that might seem like an odd choice for teachers who might think that, morning mood is good music, or, for me, I like to play gentle jazz music in the morning, but these 8 and 9-year-olds would start every morning with the St. Matthew's Passion, and they thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Children love to imitate grown-ups. They love to imitate great, they love to learn about great things. And so when we play music for kids, they're getting to the point, even though they're young, where they can discern what kind of instrument makes that noise, and they can mimic the musician playing those instruments. And that's really cool for them to be able to classify and to hold in their head what different notes played by different instruments sounds like. So that's one thing that's been really fun. Our third graders are deep into the medieval era. And so we're talking about heraldry, and not just, you may remember from when you were a kid, these activities where you get like a cardboard circle and you paint a shield on it. But our kids actually are learning about the language of heraldry and how every symbol represents a goal or an ideal. And so they're learning to identify the symbols of heraldry to the point where they will actually design their own coat of arms, and they'll have to present it and they'll have to justify the placement of all of their symbols and why they chose what they chose. So that's been a lot of fun. Our poetry units are underway, and so students are learning to recognize lyrical poems from narrative poems. And our upper school students are analyzing Casey at the Bat, which is a great favorite. I think we're even getting into the countdown to the World Series, perhaps. So that's again, being in Southern California, so many Angels fans down here, it's fun for them to read Casey at the Bat and to be able to not only experience a timeless American classic, but also to look at this poem with an eye toward the virtues. And, what can we learn from players like Casey? If you were fielding a team, would you want to have a player like Casey on your team? What do you think about the times where he had the opportunity to swing and he chose not to? What do you think about that? And so, again, equipped with great material from our Western tradition, and equipped with the great books of literature, and with timeless classics, and with teachers who have that biblical worldview as second nature. Our students are really doing great things in the classroom. And so I like to come in and be a part of that. I often sometimes will just take my laptop and we'll just park it in the 5th grade classroom or the 6th grade classroom or in kindergarten and just listen to their lessons while I work. It's a very edifying community here, and it's a very edifying job that we have to see so much wonder and joy on a regular basis.
Wow, that sounds fun. I mean, for what you do, I'm sure you're busy, but I don't know how you manage all that. Teaching a lot of different things: poetry, heraldry, and a little bit of music appreciation,
And that's the joy of teaching in a classical school. It is just about as opposite as you can get from a lot of these kind of sterile, stay in your lane, stay in your subject, only teach the scripted curriculum that you're given kind of environment. There's a reason a lot of teachers campus switch and make the switch to classical Christian education, because of just the opportunity to experience such joy and such integration of many different subjects.
and I bet the big kind of result of all this is all the teachers and the students can see that you're really embodying, our vision, which is like you're living out this Christ-centered culture, integration of arts and music and poetry and Christ, and for them to see, their principle, and living this out and enjoying it, they're like, you know, I, I think I see that. If I were students, I'm like, wow, I see how I can grow into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that.
Well, and that again goes back to the talent and the gifts that our faculty has, and how blessed we are to have a faculty like that. Because what's going to happen is you'll have a student come from junior kinder or kinder, and that's the only experience they will ever know. They won't know anything else but coming into an environment where we're all learning together, we're all excited, our teachers are passionate. Now, let's be honest, we all have days where we're a little low energy, but we can build each other up, and we can always remember the lofty goals that we have for ourselves. And that's going to be their attitude toward learning, or at least that's what we strive for, is for students to kind of not know any better than to equate learning with joy and to take that with them. And so by the time they are they're older and they're starting to feel more of the counteracting forces of the world, they've got enough built-in reserves to know that's not normal. That's not the way it should be. That's counter to what I've been taught, and I can withstand that. And perhaps even if God is calling me in this direction, I can try and combat that in my own way.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell now. I'm listening to your testimony, so to speak, so far, that the dissertation that you wrote about wonder and the importance of evoking wonder in our children.
Well, I appreciate that, but again, I kind of, in a way, I kind of don't know any better. I come from a long line of teachers, and so I grew up with a mom who was an English teacher and who would read me the children's versions of the stories that she was teaching to her students. My grandfather and my grandmother both were in Christian education, higher education. And so I come from a family where, instead of, some people come from a medical family, or some people come from, business family. Our business was education. And so not only understanding that everything that there is to learn reflects the natural order and design of God, but also finding joy in learning was very much something that I credit in my family. We've both talked about how we've been privileged to have very, when I say educated families, I don't just mean, pedigreed with all these degrees, but I mean, we both come from families that value learning, and that really think that, the brain is not only a muscle, but it's the gift that the Lord gives us, and that we should fill it with wisdom, with knowledge and wisdom.
Amen. So God has given us so many good things. Um, so as we close out this session, what hopes do you have? What kind of uh, dreams do you have regarding how our community, our school will grow?
Well, we have such a vibrant community, but um, I think my dream and a desire that so many of us have is to be able to share our gifts with more and more. And I think that a desire that many of us have here is to be able to share this environment, and to share our gifts with the other Christian families that are out there in Southern California, and that God will bless this school. And if it's in His desire, will multiply. I think that we classical schools are all on the same ultimate team. We're all doing great things. And so my desire is for all of us to be able to thrive, and for all of us to be protected, and for more and more families to take advantage of school choice and making the best informed decision that they can about where to send their children, and to know that that is their right. And that more and more parents and families will avail themselves of classical Christian education, and that we can share our program of learning, and that we can grow our community even more. I think that's the dream.
Thank you.